This is a review of the RTX 3080 Ti in 2025. Is the 3080 Ti still relevant and worth buying on the used market? After all, its price to performance is quite tempting, and in today's video, we're going to find out just how much value it offers, and we're going to compare it to the previous gen flagship, the 2080 Ti, and also the RTX 4070 Super, which seems to be the closest in performance. So first, let's start with some history. When Nvidia made the RTX 3080, they figured it was a good card, but they could do better. And with that, the RTX 3080 Ti came to be a card that rivals the RTX 3090 in specs, but has half the VRAM at only 12GB of the 24GB available on the 3090. Starting with the CUDA cores, the 3080 Ti has 10,240, while the 3090 has 10,496, so you get similar performance on both cards, especially with some minor OC on the 3080 Ti. The 12GB of VRAM was also not as bad as the 3080, which originally had 10GB, with a 12GB variant coming later. The 3080 Ti also featured a 384-bit bus, which allowed for an impressive 912GB per second worth of memory bandwidth. As for its TDP, it was rated for 350 watts, which is actually not too bad in today's standards. And even in a two-slot design, the card would remain under 80 degrees, and in my case, it would not go above 77 degrees. So, aside from its impressive stats, what features did the 3080 Ti and its generation offer? First was the second generation of RT cores, which increased ray tracing performance compared to Turing by 1.7 times. The second was the third generation of Tensor cores, and these are the cores that handle DLSS and AI workloads, which made it possible to speed up calculations by 2.7 times. The third was resizable bar, which was a new technology that allowed the processor to access the entire VRAM buffer of the card directly and not in small portions of 256MB as it was before. In some games, having this enabled on your system did offer a performance boost. The fourth was HDMI 2.1, which enabled 4K 120Hz and 8K 60Hz. The fifth was the AV1 decoder, which offered lower bitrate with higher quality. The sixth feature was NVIDIA Reflex, which reduced input lag for competitive games, and this feature provided a 30 to 50% reduction in input lag. And the seventh was NVIDIA Broadcast, which was a convenient streaming app with AI features such as smart noise reduction, virtual background, and auto-framing of the camera. And now to the benchmarks, which will also include the RTX 2080 Ti to see the generational uplift, and the RTX 4070 Super, which offers similar performance with one nuance you will learn about later. Starting with Alan Wake 2 on Ultra settings using DLSS quality, the 3080 Ti gets a decent 48% lead, and with RT enabled, the 3080 Ti is a whopping 68% faster, making it an impressive generational upgrade from the 2080 Ti. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, using very high settings and DLSS quality with RT enabled, the 3080 Ti manages to get 10 to 15 FPS more than the 2080 Ti, making it 27% faster on average, and this allowed it to remain above 60 FPS most of the time. In The Last of Us 2 on very high settings using native DLAA, the 3080 Ti manages to remain above 70 to 80 plus FPS most of the time, while the 2080 Ti hovers around 50 to 60 FPS, and the overall performance difference in this game is a 38% lead in favor of the 3080 Ti, but the experience is still smooth and enjoyable for both cards. In Cyberpunk 2077, on Ultra with DLSS quality, the 3080 Ti gets a healthy 34% lead over the 2080 Ti, and once you enable RT, the gap widens once more to 43% in favor of the 3080 Ti, which manages to give us a decent 60 FPS with RT enabled. But to challenge it further, we tested it with path tracing and paired with DLSS balanced, and as you can see, the 3080 Ti was able to get 35 to 40 FPS, with the 2080 Ti struggling to maintain 20 FPS, so this might not sound as impressive, but the 3080 Ti was 95% faster with path tracing on, despite getting only 40 FPS. In Apex Legends on Ultra settings, the performance difference is only 15%, with the 3080 Ti being the faster of the two, but these values could be higher if there wasn't a CPU bottleneck, as both cards aren't being fully utilized. In God of War Ragnarok on Ultra settings using native DLA, both cards managed to give us a decent and playable experience, with the 2080 Ti hovering 60 FPS, while the 3080 Ti gets a 35% lead and hovers around 80 FPS. The same performance difference is seen in Horizon Forbidden West while using very high settings and DLSS quality, with the 3080 Ti getting a 35% lead over the 2080 Ti. In Indiana Jones on Ultra settings, using DLSS quality, there seemed to be a minor CPU bottleneck on the 3080 Ti, as the Ryzen 5 7400F I'm using is apparently not enough to fully utilize the 3080 Ti in this game, but nevertheless, the 3080 Ti did manage to get a healthy 21% lead over the predecessor, the 2080 Ti. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 on Ultra settings, the gap widens, with the 3080 Ti getting an impressive 38% lead and managing to remain above 60 plus FPS, but both cards will offer a decent and smooth experience in this game. The true power of the newer Ampere architecture is revealed in the Half-Life 2 RTX demo, where the 3080 Ti gets nearly double the FPS of its predecessor, making it a whopping 88% lead over the 2080 Ti. In Spider-Man 2, very high, using DLSS quality, both cards seem to experience a CPU bottleneck as both aren't fully utilized, but regardless of this, the 3080 Ti was still ahead by 31%, hovering around 90 FPS average over the 2080 Ti at 70 FPS. So, compared to what we have seen, modern games are increasingly using ray tracing, and thanks to the powerful RT cores in the 3080 Ti compared to the 2080 Ti, the difference in performance can reach 70 to 90% for RT, but without the ray tracing, the difference is about 30 to 35% on average in favor of the 3080 Ti. But what if we pair the 3080 Ti versus the 4070 Super? In Alan Wake 2 on Ultra settings, using DLA and RT off, the 3080 Ti manages a 7.9% lead over the 4070 Super, but with RT on, the newer card has the advantage of superior RT cores, so the 4070 Super takes the lead by a decent 20% while using over 100 watts less than the 3080 Ti. In Assassin's Creed Mirage on very high settings, with the resolution scaling at 150% to ensure no CPU bottleneck, the 3080 Ti takes the lead by a minor 4%. In Assassin's Creed Shadows on very high with RT on and DLSS quality, once again, the newer card has better RT, so the 4070 Super takes the lead by 11% over the 3080 Ti. In Black Myth Wukong cinematic settings with DLSS quality, both cards give us identical performance with a minor 2% difference between them in favor of the 4070 Super, but that's within margin of error. However, with RT enabled, the 4070 Super widened the gap with a massive 40% lead over the 3080 Ti, while again consuming 100 watts less, and this remained the case over multiple runs of the same benchmark. In Counter-Strike 2 very high settings, we managed to remain GPU bound at higher quality settings, and this allowed the 3080 Ti to take the lead by around 12% over the 4070 Super. In Cyberpunk 2077 on Ultra settings, native DLA with no RT, the 3080 Ti manages a 12.6% lead, as this game launched within the same time frame as the RTX 3000 series, so it should be well optimized for the Ampere architecture, and this continues even with RT enabled, as the 3080 Ti is still 5% faster than the 4070 Super, which should have better RT performance. However, once you enable path tracing, that's when the 4070 Super finally pulls ahead and manages an 8% lead over the 3080 Ti despite losing to it in regular RT, but it's still a minor 39 to 43 FPS difference between the two. In Ghost of Tsushima very high settings, using native DLA, the 3080 Ti wins by a minor 4% over the 4070 Super. In God of War Ragnarok on Ultra settings, using native DLA, both cards give us identical performance, with the 3080 Ti sometimes taking a small 2% lead over the 4070 Super, but it's most likely a tie as they both perform the same. In the Half-Life RTX demo on Ultra using DLSS quality, this being a heavy RT demo, it's no surprise that the card with the newer RT cores wins, and it's the same as in Black Myth Wukong since the 4070 Super takes the lead by an impressive 40%. In Horizon Forbidden West, using very high settings and native DLAA, we get a minor 1 or 2 FPS lead in favor of the 4070 Super, but that falls within the margin of error, so it's basically a tie. In Indiana Jones, using supreme settings with DLSS quality and RT on, both cards are still not 100% utilized, meaning the R5 7400F can't max out these cards in 1440p, but the 4070 Super does still manage a minor 1.7% lead over the 3080 Ti, but there is some room for better performance with a faster CPU. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 on Ultra using native DLAA, the 3080 Ti takes the lead by 4% over the 4070 Super, but both cards play this game really well regardless. In Monster Hunter Wilds on Ultra settings using native DLAA and no RT, the game is very demanding, seeing as to how both cards can barely manage 60 plus FPS, but the 4070 Super is still the faster of the two cards, managing a 7% lead over its much more power-hungry equivalent, the 3080 Ti. In Stalker 2 on Epic settings using native DLAA, both cards give us a near-tie experience with the 4070 Super taking the lead by a minor 2 to 6 FPS. In Silent Hill 2, using Epic settings, DLSS quality and RT on, both cards manage a rather playable experience, but the 4070 Super does take the lead with an extra 2 to 8 FPS on average. In Star Wars Jedi Survivor Ultra with RT on, both cards once again give us similar performance, but the 3080 Ti does get a 7.8% lead. In Starfield on Ultra settings, we get another near-tie experience, but the 4070 Super does get an extra 2 to 3 FPS. In the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster on Ultra settings using DLSS quality and RT enabled, as expected, the 4070 Super takes the lead as the card with better RT cores, giving us 14% more FPS than the 3080 Ti. In The Last of Us 2, very high, native DLAA, the 3080 Ti claws back a win of about 5% over the 4070 Super, but both cards offer a more than playable experience. As for the gaming results, the RTX 3080 Ti is still a 1440p beast despite it being 4 years old, and it would mostly only lose against the 4070 Super when ray tracing was a factor. The only caveat over the 4070 Super is the efficiency, as the 4070 will often give you similar to or even better performance while using 100 watts less than the 3080 Ti, so if efficiency is your target, the 4070 Super will be the better option. In terms of price and value for money, the 3080 Ti still offers tremendous value if you can find one for under $500. Once you go past that, then the RTX 4070 Super and the 5070 will offer better value for money and will both be more efficient and offer superior RT among other newer features like DLSS frame generation that isn't supported on the older 3080 Ti.